Thus all the work that Solomon made for the house of the Lord was finished. And Solomon brought in all the things that David his father had dedicated, and the silver and the gold, and all the instruments put he among the treasures of the house of God. Then Solomon assembled the elders of Israel, and all the heads of the tribes, the chief of the fathers of the children of Israel, unto Jerusalem, to bring up the ark of the covenant of the Lord out of the city of David, which is Zion. Wherefore all the men of Israel assembled themselves unto the king in the feast which was in the 7th month. And all the elders of Israel came, and the Levites took up the ark. And they brought up the ark, and the tabernacle of the congregation, and the holy vessels that were in the tabernacle. These did the priests and the Levites bring up. Also, King Solomon and all the congregation of Israel that were assembled unto him before the ark sacrificed sheep and oxen, which could not be told nor numbered for multitude. And the priests brought in the ark of the covenant of the Lord unto his place, to the oracle of the house, in the most holy place, even under the wings of the cherubims. For the cherubims spread forth their wings over the place of the ark, and the cherubims covered the ark and the staves thereof above. And they drew up the staves of the ark, and the ends of the staves were seen from the ark before the oracle. But they were not seen without, and there it is unto this day. There was nothing in the ark save the 2 tables which Moses put therein at Horeb, when the Lord made a covenant with the children of Israel, when they came out of Egypt. And it came to pass, when the priests were come out of the holy place, for all the priests that were present were sanctified, and did not then wait by course, also the Levites, which were singers, all them of Asaph, of Heman and Jeduthun, with their sons and their brethren, being arrayed in white linen, having cymbals and psalteries and harps, stood at the east end of the altar, with them 120 priests sounding with trumpets. It came even to pass, as the trumpeters and singers were as one, to make one sound to be heard in the praising and thanking the Lord. And when they lifted up their voice with the trumpets and cymbals and instruments of music, and praised the Lord, saying, For he is good, for his mercy endureth forever, that then the house was filled with a cloud, even the house of the Lord, so that the priests could not stand to minister by reason of the cloud, for the glory of the Lord had filled the house of God.
Thanks very much, What then, over the next fortnight or so, look at occasions when the temple of God was dedicated, or some celebration had gone on there, and this would be the first one. So it would be the temple that Solomon built. Then this evening what I'd like to do is look at Hezekiah, when Hezekiah cleansed the temple, and then next week we'll have a look at Josiah. We may do another one, but Josiah, where he not only cleansed but he repaired the temple, and we'll look at some of the things that went on, some of the reactions and responses. But of the three, Solomon is most certainly the most planned of the three. It's the most planned there in regards of that. In regards of the most sudden, it's Hezekiah. It came from nowhere. It's astonishing, the change that went around the whole of the country within 6 weeks. Astonishing changes went on when Hezekiah first became king. And then with Josiah, it was certainly the most fought for. He had to work his way through the system. And people don't like change. And he began when he was 16 years of age to seek the Lord. And whilst there is nothing to say that intimates in regards of the personal opposition that he had, it took him years to reach the point Hezekiah reached in a day. What Hezekiah reached in 16 days took him 8 years. Astonishing. 12 years I think it is. And so we see that there was opposition there, and so he had to fight his way through. And but he came through with it all. So today I'd like to look at the most planned, Solomon's temple, and we'll have a look at some of the things going on there. Pentecostal people especially, but church people as well, don't like the thought of being organized, or don't like the thought of plans. They feel that that's not fitting in with the Holy Spirit. May I just say this? There is no one more organized than the Holy Spirit. No one more organized. No one with greater plans. As Neil I love the phrase he uses, no one plays the long game better. I wasn't a bad sprinter. I was the fastest in junior school. When I went to grammar school, I was about the third fastest of a group of about 90 boys. And in that first 100, I was fine. If they had 60-meter races, I probably would have won. But as soon as we started going up beyond the 100 meters, the 200, even 400 meters, I remember my teacher's face in Form 5. All my mates had left school. They either joined the army or left in Form 4. You could leave at 15 in those days. And he put me in the 400 trial test to run for the school in the county games. And he put me against this boy that was twice the size of me. In normal circumstances, I should have beaten him quite easy. But I remember Des was his name. I won't go into his second name, but Des was his name, and we set off. And I was whooping him over 300 meters. And I came to the 300 meter mark, and I thought, I just don't want to do this. Just don't want to do it. And I stopped. And I'll never forget my teacher's face when he looked at me and was so disappointed. He had coached me in rugby over 4 years and been very patient with me. But the look that he gave me on that day, when no one plays the long game better than God. And I remember meeting one brother who, when we sat down together, we wanted to meet, we had a little chat, and it was for about 45 minutes. He told me all his plans. I don't think I've ever met anybody with more plans. Plans for this for the church, not this church now, plans for this part of the church, plan for a long-term plan, a short-term plan. After 45 minutes, he took a breath. And he said, how about you, Matt? How's things with you? And we had just changed from Songs of Fellowship 2 to Songs of Fellowship 4. I thought, well, all his plans, he's going to look at me daft by here to say, that's a change for us. So I just said, oh, we're in transition. We're coming in, just in transition. Some people love plans. Listen now, this temple was made and inspired by the plans of the Holy Spirit. We find in the book of Chronicles, I think it's chapter 28, 1 Chronicles 28, and it talks about those things that David was inspired by the Spirit. Inspired him. I want this, that, I want that. And there must have been thoughts in David's mind how this was so different to the tabernacle. The tabernacle was so humble, it fitted into the middle of the camp quite nicely. There in the center of the camp was the tabernacle. Similar, the outer garments, can I call it? Outer coats that would seem it's just an ordinary tent, but a big one, albeit for the whitened or the linen cloth that went on the side. And yet we find with David that he was instructed with so many things. For instance, the mercy seat was to be a huge thing. Look, originally the ark, in the tabernacle, it just sat upon the top of the ark. But this one was a huge one, with cherubim, with their wings spread. Not like this, but their wings spread, touching from one wall to the other wall, and touching each other's wing on the inside, hovering over this place called the mercy seat. Instead of one great laver, there was a huge base now. In fact, I think it calls it a sea in the Authorized Version. Huge thing. With 12 full-size bulls underneath, made of bronze or gold, I can't remember. Whereas there were one candelabra, now there were 10. And you can imagine the changes that David must have been racking up in his mind. What will the people say? Have we gone over the top? And so we find here that Solomon now, David is not allowed to build it because as far as God was concerned, he was regarded as a man of war that had shed blood. Never Jewish bloodline. Never Jewish blood. Never slew anyone for the crown. Never slew anyone for the crown. But he was still a man of war. So it was given to his son. And we find in 1 Kings chapter 6, verse 28, it says concerning Solomon, after 7 years, it was built. 7 years. All the plans that David had had, and all the work where Solomon had brought it in together, 7 years of work. He'd actually finished on the 7th month of the year as well. The feast when there were, or the month where there were 3 celebrations, the Feast of Trumpets, the Feast of Atonement, and the Feast of Tabernacles. It's the most religious month of the year in actual fact, in the Jewish calendar. Chapter 5 verse 1 says this. So all the work that Solomon had done was finished. You see, 7 years to build, finished in the 7th month. It wasn't exactly 7 years, but he finished in the 7th year. 7 is complete. Whole. Perfect. That's what it means. But when it says there, all the work that Solomon had done was finished, it means complete. Whole. In harmony. It's a lovely little phrase there, isn't it? He finished it in harmony. It's from that word we get the word peace. Shalom. It's from that word. And so this work of logistics, the plans, the preparations, the work on site, the work off site. Who's the mason that understood that if you go up into the mountain and create a cave there, a cavern, and dig the stone that's quarried there, it's far easier to cut in the darkness of the cave. You bring it out into the light, and it becomes a stone that's almost impossible to chip. And so a lot of the work was done away from sight. And so very often, the work of God prospers, not only in a place like this, but away from sight. In the darkness. Well, it wouldn't be the quiet, would it, for stonemasons about, but you understand what I mean. The work was completed in complete harmony. Now again, we're looking back to the book of Acts, when we looked at it, of working together, of being together, of together. And here we have it. This in harmony. There was one thing that didn't change. There was one thing that David didn't give instructions to make. One thing that Solomon didn't make. And that was the Ark of the Covenant. They kept the original. And it says this concerning what was underneath in the Ark itself were the original 2 tablets that Moses had brought down from Mount Sinai. Here it's called Horeb. So the original Ark with the original word is brought up into the house of the Lord. Just like when David carried the Ark, they were shouting, they were singing, they was rejoicing, they were sacrificing. And so we read here that there was tremendous sacrifices as the Ark was moved up onto the Temple Mount to the place where this new temple was standing. It's a great sense. You see, there are some things that don't change. There are some things that have to change. But there are some things that don't change. And whilst we all struggle, and I mean this sincerely now, we all struggle with change. Every one of us do. When we're used to how we do it, and this is how it should be done, and this is how it's always been done, We are uncomfortable when changes come, however they're enforced upon us, whether by choice or by enforcement. But there are some things that do not change. One thing that does not change is the ark of his presence. We still need that, most surely. Another thing that doesn't change is the word of God. It stands true. I think in the song that we sang concerning the cross, to the old rugged cross I will ever be true. Its shame and reproach gladly bear. Then he call me someday to my home far away, when his glory forever I'll share. To the old rugged cross I shall ever be true. And so we find with this that there were tremendous changes going on, and yet there was this recognition of the need for stability. We need your presence, Lord. We've got it up there, haven't we? That sign about me. We need the word of God to be amongst us. And so Solomon, in this gathering together where the building has been constructed in harmony. Well, what do you like when you're in the kitchen, gents, and your wife comes in? Does she notice that, well, with me, I'm washing the dishes in the dark. I haven't put the light on. So she puts the light on and you go, she got me again. When we're doing a job, we like to get on with it. And when someone comes in from the side, we can get a little irritated. But this whole building was completed in harmony. People of different levels of expertise and specialities. Some were good for labouring. When they refurbished the Pontlottin Junior School, where Pontlottin Ealing were, there was a handful of men of it. Most of them had retired. In fact, I think every one of them had retired. There was one man there who was good on the shovel. He was an ex-miner. His shovel was twice the size of what the ordinary men would do with their shovel. There was a man there called Brad, who's moved away from the area now, a school teacher. He would turn up with sandals and bare feet to dig trenches. And Ralph would look at him with this big, big shovel that Ralph would have, that was double the size of anything, and Brad would be trying to keep up with him. But there was no look of disdain. No look from Ralph looking down and thinking, well, best to stick with what you are. Don't get your fingernails dirty. But they got in there together. There's a harmony that can come, see, through the church. A harmony to do the work of God. It continues in the worship. This is what it says, verses 11 to 13. I won't go to verse 11, I'll just pick up on verse 13. It came to pass when the Levites, or the priests, the trumpeters and singers were as one, to make one sound to be heard in praising and thanking the Lord, when they lifted up their voice with trumpets and cymbals and instruments of music, and praised the Lord, saying, for he is good, for his mercy endures forever. You see, there was unity amongst the priests, amongst the trumpeters, amongst the musicians and singers. They made one sound. They weren't going off in different directions, weren't going off with different chords or notes or whatever you do in music. They didn't go off with different tangents. They were there as one group of people to worship the Lord, and they made one sound together. And it resulted in this, a recognition similar to that first chorus that we sang, the one that Anita just taught us now. For he is good, and his mercy endures forever. Upon them doing that, it says that the house was filled with a cloud, so that the priests could not stand to minister, for the glory of the Lord had filled the house. We find exactly the same in the days when the tabernacle was first opened. They could not stand. Why couldn't they stand? It says that a cloud came down, and that cloud is depicted as the glory of God. That word glory, what it means is this: weight. That's what it means. Not weight as in weight for a bus, but weight as in pounds and ounces. The weight of God came down. So as they lifted him up, he came down. and each one that was in the temple were unable to stand. That would mean that they would have bowed down. We know at this point that they were in the temple. At this point they were in the temple. And so as they lifted him up, he came down. And the presence of God was so heavy that you could not stand. The air, as Jonathan Edwards says concerning Northampton, was pregnant with the presence of God. Many things had changed. When any of the priests would have gone in there, they would have been surprised at what they found there. But one thing did not change: his glorious presence. And it was as awe-inspiring then as it was in the days of Moses, when men were unable to stand. I often wonder if that's what caught the eye of those that were watching them on the day of Pentecost, and wondered if they were drunk, for they could not stand. I wonder if that's what it was. We tend to trivialize it just a little bit. These men are drunk. Then we start thinking about men in half-cut. But I wonder if it's because the weight of God came down, not in a building, but in the whole public arena. The weight of God came down, and men and women bowed before him. Well, we find after they'd done this, it says in Solomon, chapter 6, verse 12 says this, and Solomon stood before the altar. I mentioned last night in a shortened version of the three men that we're looking at over the next few weeks. I mentioned last night, Jesus said that we should go into a closet and pray when we pray. But Solomon built a scaffold. Everybody could see him. He had a scaffold 3 cubits high, about 4 foot high. And there he stood before the altar of God, knelt down upon his knees, spread forth his hands towards heaven, and prayed. We talked about this before. How do you pray? So very often, if I'm in the little cubbyhole that I'm in the house, like, it's with furrowed brow. And yet we read of Jesus, after John 13, 14, 15, 16, after these words, he lifted his eyes towards heaven and prayed. There's an openness in the relationship between Christ and the Father. And it's spreading forth. You lay yourself open, see. You know, I can remember my youngest brother doing this for me, and I caught him right in the solar plexus when we were kids. And I used to have the boxing gloves, and he'd have bare knuckles, and I'd go on my knees, and we'd be out in the kitchen fighting. And he did that once, and I go, you've asked for it then, so I give it to him. You leave yourself open, don't you? You're very vulnerable in this position. He knelt down, spread forth his hands, and he prayed. And in chapter 7, verse 1, it says this, and when Solomon had finished praying, the fire came down from heaven and consumed the burnt offering and the sacrifices, and the glory of the Lord filled the house. Notice some of the things that begin to make themselves known now when God comes down in this manner. We find it different with Hezekiah. There are different emphases in Hezekiah's refurbishment of the building. Different emphasis altogether. It's not so much the presence of God, although that's a given that he's there. The writer in Hezekiah's day is considering the effects upon the people. And so here it says, and the glory of the Lord came. When the people worshipped, the glory came down. When Solomon prayed, the glory came down. Would you agree with me that we need that spirit of worship, that spirit of prayer, that approaches God with open hands, open heart, open mind, open mouth? Doesn't he say in the book of Malachi, open your mouth wide and I'll fill it. It's like, if a drunken man said that to you, you think it's a threat. Open your mouth wide and I will fill it. Everything about God is open, open, open. And here we find, as he finishes praying, the fire came down from heaven, consumed the offering and the sacrifices, and the glory of the Lord filled the house. So much so, notice what it says there. It's in Luke chapter 7. And the priests could not enter, not stand this time. The glory of God here is even greater than when the worship was going on. Because it wasn't so much that they could not stand, they could not enter into the temple. So they've come out. Obviously, to look at the offerings that were being offered. The burnt offering and the sacrifice. They've come out from the temple into the courtyard. And they could not enter the building because God had come down. And this is the wonderful thing. How did they know that he came down? How did they know? Verse 3 tells us. Look what it says. When all the children of Israel saw how the fire came down and the glory of the Lord on the temple. Not just in the temple, but on the temple now. Doesn't Jesus refer to this, that the Spirit of God should be of such measure within us, that yes, it's in us, bubbling up inside, like a fountain welling up, but it also says a stream that goes out. People shall taste of what it is for the glory of God to be upon the church of God. And they can see it from afar. And so these people that are gathered here, thousands of them, it says, they gathered from one area of Jerusalem right outside of the city. They came in their hordes and they saw the glory of God on the house of God. That spirit of worship, that spirit of prayer, the unchanging word of God, and the ark of his presence. We're living in a day that is telling us about change all the time. Friends, be assured of this. There are some things that will not change. Above all, I am the Lord and I do not change. Horatius Bonar, no change, Jehovah knows. What a wonderful truth. He's rock-like, he's pillar-like. He's not going to change one iota. His word will never change. His presence will always do the same things. Always to bring people to that place where they can find that relationship to build upon. There are some things that will not change. Thank God for them. May God give to us that spirit of worship, that spirit of prayer, that will allow us to receive the glory within, but to such a measure to have the glory without. Stephen's face, it shone like an angel. Shone like an angel. What is it when it says in Psalm 8? Let's have a little look at it. We looked at it when we looked at Hebrews, didn't we? Psalm 8. O Lord, our Lord, how excellent is your name in all the earth, who have set your glory above the heavens. Out of the mouths of babes and nursing infants you ordain strength because of your enemies, that you may silence the enemy and the avenger. When I consider your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars which you've ordained, what is man that you are mindful of him, and the Son of Man that you visit him? For you've made him for a little while lower than the angels, and you have crowned him with glory and honor. You have made him to have dominion over the works of your hands. You put all things under his feet, so that no one could say to a lion, come on board. He could say to an elephant, come here. And he'd come. There was a picture in the Daily Mail yesterday. I was telling someone the other day, I really fancy having a Shire horse. They look so beautiful. They look so beautiful. Knowing my luck, I'd have a wild one. But there was a 5 or 6 year old girl sat on this huge animal, and she didn't show one iota of fear at all. Imagine what it's like when the glory of God is resting upon you. Imagine what it's like. What a wonderful thing it is for God to draw near to a people that worship Him and speak to Him in prayer. May God grant it to us in Jesus' name. Tonight we look at Hezekiah by God's help.